Know that irritating. Know that. Know that irritating. Know that. Hey everyone, welcome back to Fastly, where we talk about all things for women, but we're not just for women. My name is Amber, and I'm so glad, so very happy that you've been able to join with me today. In my last episode, which was also my very first episode of Facetly, I talked about hormonal changes and how it affects women in midlife. Now, in this episode, I want to talk about how it's affecting us in the workplace. And this is a really special and important topic for me because, well, let me just ask you, can you put a finger down if you left your job because you were experiencing some really, really weird symptoms and maybe you thought it was like a health related thing and you thought the job was too stressful or whatever, and it's probably perimenopause? I'm going to put all my fingers down because that's basically what happened to me. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully I will be able to see you through all the way until the end. Thanks again for joining. Okay, so just a little bit of a backstory. I think I might do a whole separate video on how and why I left my job, but the job that I did leave, I left in 2024. It was August of 2024, and this was a job that I really enjoyed doing. It was a job that I had been wanting to get into since I was a teenager. Okay, so just at that time, we'd been teleworking for a while, like since 2020, we've been able to telework strictly from home. People had to start coming back into the office periodically, but because of some existing health issues, I was able to get a medical exemption and I didn't have to come back in. Well, my boss informed me that I was going to have to start coming back into the office. This wouldn't have been such a big deal had it not been for one big, big thing specifically, and that was some new onset of vertigo. It was actually not new because I've had vertigo since I had the stroke, but it had gotten a lot worse. I didn't know why. Again, I thought it was just another Amber health issue thing. I was just not really paying that much attention to it. But ultimately, the day before I decided that I had to leave, the vertigo was so bad that I thought I was having another stroke. And that's what convinced me because I said to myself, my job will replace me, but my family can't. My friends can't replace me. I thought it was that serious to where it was like either choose this job and risk my life or, have to make this decision and leave my job and find some other way to, make money, survive, whatever. And that's what it has come down to for a lot of women. And here's the surprising thing. 1 out of every 10 women are quitting their jobs because of the hormonal fluctuations that they're going through in midlife. These hormonal fluctuations will be attributed to maybe perimenopause or even things that are happening post-menopause. And that's what I want to talk about today. Women in mid-career are leaving their jobs in higher numbers. And again, like I said, 1 out of every 10 women, which is 10% of women who are in midlife, are leaving their jobs. And they're leaving their jobs because of the difficulties that are arising due to the hormonal changes that occur during perimenopause and even continue into postmenopause for some women. Um, like I said, that's 10%. Can you imagine 10% of the workforce, especially if they're midlife, mid-career, leaving, taking all that valuable knowledge with them because they are legitimately afraid for their lives, concerned that maybe there's some major health event that's going on with their lives, or they just don't feel capable to do the job anymore with them. USA Today talked about this, and not just USA Today. I was really encouraged to see a lot of BBC.com. I'm an American, so I'm not British, but BBC has a lot of information about menopause and midlife changes for women. So that was really encouraging. There was one BBC.com article that I had run into that had talked about a woman, and she's a British woman. Her name is Madhu Kapoor. And I'm looking to the side of my notes here just in case you're wondering, she, similar to me, had a government job. And for her, she left her job after 23 years, almost 2.5 decades of a career field, and she had to leave. So I'm going to insert a clip of Madhu, just a short clip of Madhu, in a moment here. She left her
Madhu,
job.
you were working in a job you loved. As I said, you were there for over 2 decades, 23 years, when you started going through the symptoms of perimenopause.
Yeah.
Talk us through what happened. Were you aware you were going through perimenopause?
I had no idea at all. I actually thought, early 40s would be great for me. My 40s was going to be a great decade for me. I was in a job, daughters were growing up, moving away. In my early 40s, I started to have a few changes happening, such as my skin changing. It would start literally burning out of nowhere, or I'd have blotches on my skin. And then I would have itchy skin as well, where it sort of feels like ants are crawling all over your body, your legs, your arms, my neck. And I just didn't know what was happening. My nails were changing. So those were really small symptoms, but it impacted me a lot. And it's just something that I noticed, and ended up going to the GP. Nothing was discussed that this could be a symptom of menopause. So they did tests just to see if I was lacking in anything, and nothing happened. So basically, I just left my GP surgery, had no answers, and just went back, carried on working. And then it was over time my symptoms started to change. My periods were regular. And I think the one thing that I did understand about menopause was the fact that your periods will stop. And then the irregularness will actually start. Then eventually it was me just having the night sweats. Insomnia was severe. It was every single night. It was very exhausting.
Did you suspect at this point you had perimenopause?
I asked the GP the question. There was no answer at all. She said no, and then they did a test. Because I was under 45, they did a blood test for me, and it was during the first 3 days of your period you had to have this test done, and it always came back as though nothing was happening.
So this was a job that she loved, but she started experiencing some certain things with her body, and she had no idea, no clue what was going on. She had insomnia, and she also had night sweats, which was contributing to the insomnia. So it wasn't just insomnia, but she had the night sweats, which would further, disrupt her sleep. In addition to that, she was also having heart palpitations. So heart palpitations, lack of sleep. She was also having migraines, which is something that I can definitely commiserate with, migraines. And all of these things were just leaving her depleted. She was unable to do her job anymore. And she did say in one interview that she had no idea what was going on with her. She didn't know that it was perimenopause. She had gone to different doctors and gotten, little prescriptions here and there for different things, but these were just kind of treating the symptoms, not really getting down to the ultimate issue of this is perimenopause, the normal fluctuations that a lot of us go through. And there was really, treating the symptoms wasn't really going to help ultimately what she needed, which was likely going to be a rebalancing of her hormones in whatever way they were going to decide to do that. So Ms. Kapoor, in her job, she, I believe, was working for human resources for the government. And she felt she had to leave. She felt that she couldn't manage her body in a way that was going to be productive enough to continue doing the job that she'd been doing for over 20 years. Imagine that, your body that you've been used to, you've been doing great at your job, you've had no issues. And obviously, if she was able to stay for that long, she was probably one of those people who was like a point person, one of the go-to people, probably even led trainings and things like that, could have been a part of leadership. But she was so concerned about her own health and her own physical being, and how it was not cooperating with her anymore, to the point to where she felt like, I need to leave my job because there's something seriously wrong with me. And she left, and she took all of that valuable knowledge, all of that expertise, had to take it with her. There was another woman, her name was Lauren Crean, and this was also a woman who was mentioned in the BBC article. And she felt like she was having early onset dementia, and that is why she left her job. A lot of women will experience brain fog, and brain fog is essentially when your brain basically feels foggy, like your thoughts are kind of convoluted, maybe they're all over the place, you can't really focus on one thing at a time. For me personally, I felt like I would learn something while I was an intern, while I was in training, and then I almost felt like I had to retrain myself every time I was doing it. It never really fully seemed to stick. That was very frustrating for me. And for her, she also had brain fog and aphasia, which is where you're unable to find the words. And she, would have to give a presentation and forget everything that she needed to talk about. Now, it didn't say specifically how long Miss Korean was in her job, but if she was there to give presentations, and I'm sure she was, also a mid-career woman, you're very knowledgeable of what you're supposed to be talking about and what you're supposed to be doing. So imagine if you get up there, you're trying to give a presentation, and all of a sudden it just leaves you and you cannot find it. And, just that alone would make you feel very uncomfortable, probably very anxious, um, almost questioning the fact of whether or not you can do your job, maybe embarrassed as well. And so she wound up leaving her job as well. So everything that is going on with women during these midlife and these mid-career issues, it is very, very concerning. And again, a lot of women have no idea that this is what's going on with them. They might just think that, oh, I'm just not feeling too great. But then it goes on for some weeks and some months, years even. And if they have doctors who haven't been able to assess or really tell them that, hey, this is probably what you're going through, you're around that age, talk to me about your symptoms, they're not going to know what's going on. But even for women that do have doctors that maybe have told them, or maybe they just know from prior experience or talking to their girlfriends, things like that, that it sounds like perimenopause or hormonal changes that are affecting them. There's also this kind of fear to discuss that in the workplace. Ageism is still a thing. It's not supposed to be. We know that things are supposed to be fair when it comes to discrimination in the workplace. We're supposed to be able to have our jobs and not worry about, oh, I'm too old for this, or, my boss wants to bring in younger people or a more, hip crowd, whatever it is. It's very difficult to advocate for yourself if you're also having to consider these things that still do happen in the background. How do you say that, hey, I'm having hot flashes? Hot flashes are automatically associated, of course, with midlife situations with women, perimenopause, menopause, and things like that, without having somebody say that, oh, she's getting a little older. How are you supposed to say that, oh, I have brain fog or I'm forgetting, without being considered like a doddering older lady? It's very, very difficult. Very difficult. So there are several people who maybe don't understand how are these things so severe that it's affecting women to the point of they have to leave their jobs. That's understandable. I think when I was younger and wasn't going through it myself, I would have had a difficult time really understanding, like, wow, you had to leave your job because of that, come on. But also, back when I was younger, there weren't a lot of people talking about it. Or maybe there were, and I just didn't have an interest in it just because I was younger. Who knows what it was? But either way, this is very important because it's affecting 50% of the population, if not more. And although every woman is going to have her own personal experience with her hormonal changes and everything, it's not something that is, to be taken lightly, and it really should be talked about. So, just to give you some idea, besides the two women that we'd already talked about, of what is so severe that's causing women to leave their jobs, I'm going to start with one of the first signs of the hormonal fluctuations in perimenopause, and that is changes in the menstrual cycle. So, for some women, these changes might be on the positive side. So, maybe the periods are getting a little bit lighter, or maybe they're less frequent. So, for women who've had disruptions to their daily lives just because of their menstrual cycles, that lighter period or less frequent periods can be, I mean, literally a blessing. It's just like, great, yay. But then there are other women who, at some points during their perimenopause journey, are experiencing more frequent periods and or heavier flows. So I had a family member actually who her periods were like 2 weeks long at one point and would happen every 2 weeks. So it was just, that's very, very disruptive. That's not an easy thing. And they weren't easy cycles either. It was very difficult for her. And personally, I've had experiences of flooding. Now, flooding is a situation where the menstrual flow is so heavy that it creates like a flooding situation. You can double up on your feminine products and everything like that, but you're still having to go and change your products every, 20 to 45 minutes. You're just constantly in and out of the bathroom. There was another woman, I don't think that I'm going to be able to highlight her here, but I'm just thinking about her story, where she had talked about she had a 45-minute commute to and from work. And there were times where she would have to pull over, to a rest stop during her commute, just during her commute, to manage her flow. It was that heavy. And so that's very disruptive for women. If you have to imagine, going to find a bathroom every at least once, twice an hour, and how that's going to affect your day, how that's going to affect, your workflow, your customers, your production, whatever it is. So that is one of the things that can really impact a woman while she's going through perimenopause. Another issue that can affect women is a change in their pain tolerance. So for many women, there maybe is a new onset of headaches or migraines. I've been a headache and migraine person my entire life. So for people like me, the pain tolerance will start to reduce, and those headaches, so those migraines, may become more intense, or maybe they're not able to be managed by the medication that we were able to take in the past that would kind of numb it or take it away, make it a little bit more manageable. Not only are we talking about headaches and migraines, but we're also talking about body aches, joint aches. Frozen shoulder is a very common perimenopause symptom. And there are women who have, fibromyalgia, where the pain levels again are becoming less tolerable. So if you didn't know, estrogen is one of the hormones that in women help us to manage our pain tolerance. And that's a really important hormone, especially when you consider childbirth and the pain that a woman goes through during that process. So that's one of the hormones that actually helps us. It's connected to those neurotransmitters that manage the pain. Now, as the estrogen starts to drop during perimenopause, it will allow the pain sensors to really just amp up and just say, hey, I don't get that same little hormone that I was getting before. So now I'm just going to let it all loose, let it all hang out. And that's not good. It's not good for women who are dealing with, chronic pain issues in the workplace. So that is another issue. Another symptom that causes a lot of women issues in the workplace during perimenopause Hot flashes. That is another common symptom that a lot of women really, or a lot of people in general, will associate with the midlife change and menopause, change of life. Not every woman gets them. Some women get a few, some women get them a lot more frequently than other women. But a hot flash essentially is where either the whole body, or for a lot of women, for me included, it's just like maybe the top quarter of our body just begins to heat up. No warning, usually, just starts to heat up, and there's really nothing you can do to control it. So, with those hot flashes, some women get them so bad to where they will start to sweat profusely. They'll start to turn red. It's very uncomfortable, and they may sweat to the point to where my mom had a coworker. Her hair was drenched, her blouse was wet, and her hot flash happened during a staff meeting. So there's really nowhere she could have gone, nothing that she could have done. She just had to sit there and drip and just burn for several minutes. So this is another thing that's disrupting women's work, because once you have a hot flash, it is very difficult to concentrate on whatever it is you're supposed to be doing, and you can't control them. And you might not have a fan, you might not be able to adjust the thermostat at your office. Public nudity, we can't strip off all our clothes in the workplace, so that's not a thing. So it's very, very disruptive to women as well, which can also lead to anxiety, because if you're feeling like, oh my goodness, are people thinking a certain way about me? Do they see what's happening? It makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit kind of under a microscope or in the spotlight. And that anxiety doesn't help, because for a lot of women, anxiety is one of the precursors to having a hot flash. So that is very disruptive. And it might not just be one, like I said, it could be several throughout the day. Not only are the women dealing with those hot flashes during the day, but these hot flashes are also occurring at night for a lot of women. And that will result for a lot of us in night sweats, where, our body just becomes really uncomfortable, really hot, really drenched. And this can happen regardless of how cold it is in the home, regardless of how many or how few blankets, how much or whatever, how many pajamas you have on, it just does not matter. And so that's interrupting our sleep, causing insomnia, causing fatigue during the day, and also an increase in anxiety. We know that not getting enough sleep and not getting enough rest will make it more difficult for us to manage different things during the day. And that's for anybody. You might be a little bit shorter tempered because you're a little cranky. Like me personally, I'm not a morning person. Give me my coffee, give me, a little bit of time to wake up. But I'm not mean either. But I'm sure if I had enough times where I wasn't getting the proper rest, I could definitely be a little bit off and a little bit shorter. In addition to that, insomnia and sleeplessness also causes the brain to not function as well as it should. I do remember I've seen studies where it shows that not getting enough rest consistently will have the brain functioning as if you were inebriated. So if it's dangerous to be behind the wheel of a car or be operating heavy machinery while inebriated, imagine just trying to do this while you are, just trying to function at work, regardless of what kind of job you have. It could be a desk job, it could be a job with heavy machinery, whatever it is. If you are operating like you are under the influence, that's going to be very difficult. And so, again, that's another issue that women are experiencing. Another experience that some women have during perimenopause are heart palpitations. And if you don't know what a heart palpitation is, it's where the heartbeat begins to beat irregularly. So instead of the boom, 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 it's more of a fluttering sensation. It can feel faster, it can feel erratic, or like it's jumping all over the place. It can happen at any time, even when the person is at rest. And so for some people, in addition to the heart jumping around in the chest, there may be a feeling of breathlessness, like they can't catch their breath. So they may feel like, I mean, just imagine this is something that's happening in the heart, and it can make the woman feel unwell and further increase her anxiety because it is a very uncomfortable and concerning sensation. And then there are also the mental and emotional aspects of these changes. Depression becomes a new issue for some women and may increase for others who were previously affected, and the same is true for anxiety. So many women will, let's say, if they've already gone through the psychiatric or mental health process and they have received a prescription, some women are actually finding that those prescriptions aren't working as well as they used to, again, because of the change in hormones. But then there are also other women who, in midlife, they are getting brand new prescriptions for depression or anxiety. So that also contributes to a decreased confidence level for a lot of women. So that imposter syndrome, I don't remember if I had mentioned it earlier in the video, but the imposter syndrome, where you feel like, people are saying you're doing a good job, but you don't really feel like you are, and that maybe you'll be find out at any moment. That becomes a daily battle at work and in other areas of the woman's life. So it's almost a sensation of everything coming at her all at the same time. And for some reason, some unknown reason to her, she can't seem to manage it the way that she used to. She may have even felt like she was able to successfully go through things, really difficult things, challenging things, and earlier in her life. But for some reason now, some of the less challenging things or things that she was able to do just, knows like the back of her hand, now she can't do it. And so that's something that's further increasing the anxiety, increasing the depression, and damaging her confidence. And so the last thing, well, I'm going to talk about two things. They go hand in hand. But two of the last things I want to talk about are brain fog and aphasia. So, one of the more frustrating issues for midlife women in the workplace is brain fog. And this is a general feeling of frequently and easily forgetting things. And so, that's a major problem when you've been fully trained and you've been found capable at your job, but suddenly you're finding yourself forgetting how to do something, having to write things down or set alarms, and sometimes forgetting what those alarms are for. I'm guilty of that. And like the lady in the beginning of the video, I believe that was Miss Sheeran. She felt that she was having early onset dementia. So it's that bad and that debilitating. And like I said, hand in hand with the brain fog for a lot of women is aphasia. And aphasia is difficulty finding words when speaking. And that is another common complaint. Ms. Sheeran also experienced that. So imagine just trying to make your way through a presentation or a sales call while your brain is constantly blocking you from remembering the words that you should know. And even drafting an email or a text message is difficult because of this. So I'm going to close this video out here and make a part two because I do want to talk about some things that are being done for women in the workplace and how some laws are even changing in different states. There is more recognition that is being applied to women in midlife, the hormonal changes, and how it is essentially a medical event. So I do want to thank you for being here with me. If you reached the end, please don't forget to like and share and subscribe. I really appreciate you being here. I love you and hope you're having a great, wonderful day, weekend, whatever part of the week it is. And I'll join you again next time on Fastedly. Take care, loves.